It was Easter the other day, and the signs popped up all over my neighborhood again, as they do every year at this time. They got me thinking. Jesus rising from the dead is the very cornerstone of Christianity. It is such a big deal, in fact, that the number one apostle, Paul, said, "If Christ has not been raised, our preaching is useless, and so is your faith." That resurrection claim is so distinctive that I've heard some Christians declare their religion superior to others if for no other reason than that peculiarity alone, as if Christianity deserves some higher level of respect because it lays claim to this supposedly unbeatable trump card. It amuses me how very confident they are about it too, because the book they reference to prove it is simply riddled with doubt on the topic. Now, why would there be any doubt concerning such a supposedly well-documented event? Lee Strobel, a favorite Christian apologist, wrote what many Christians consider to be the definitive book on this subject, The Case for Christ. His approach was to examine the evidence, such as it is, as though he were a seasoned investigative reporter, interviewing experts and going through the gospel accounts of Jesus' final hours. He treated it like a cold case. After many discussions with many experts, Strobel then concluded that the only reasonable explanation for the empty tomb was that Jesus had actually risen from the dead. Yet, in the 27th chapter of Matthew, there's a hole in Strobel's analysis big enough to drive a truck through. After Jesus' death, his body is left unguarded in the tomb for at least part, if not most, of a day. It's right there in verses 62 through 64. The next day, the one after Preparation Day, the chief priests and the Pharisees went to Pilate. "Sir," they said, "we remember that while he was still alive, that deceiver said, 'After 3 days I will rise again.' So give the order for the tomb to be made secure until the 3rd day. Otherwise, his disciples may come and steal the body and tell the people that he has been raised from the dead." So sure enough, the tomb was left unguarded, and even those Bronze Age nincompoops realized how easy it would be to fake a resurrection. Posting a guard the day after Jesus' body was interred was, of course, pointless, but whatever. And did anyone even bother to check to see if the body was still present when the guards finally got there? It's not mentioned. So yeah, we still have no idea if there was a body in there or not. In the next chapter, when the tomb is open and there's, gasp, no corpse inside, we are introduced to another damning element to this resurrection narrative: the willingness of guards to take bribes. While the women were on their way, some of the guards went into the city and reported to the chief priests everything that had happened. When the chief priests had met with the elders and devised a plan, they gave the soldiers a large sum of money, telling them, "You are to say, 'His disciples came during the night and stole him away while we were asleep.' If this report gets to the governor, we will satisfy him and keep you out of trouble." So the soldiers took the money and did as they were instructed. So yeah, is it even remotely possible that this is what actually happened? That either the disciples stole the body in the hours before the tomb was watched, which would certainly have been the easiest time, or that they stole it afterwards by simply bribing the guards? Or is it more likely that a rotting cadaver reanimated? And bear in mind, this is literally the only account of Jesus' tomb being guarded at all in any of the Gospels. For those who have Lee Strobel's book, I'm sorry, he just dodges the unguarded tomb issue, though rather artfully, I must admit. He wriggles and he squirms around it. Clearly, he wants to drop the matter entirely as quickly as possible. The closest he ever gets to addressing it directly is in chapter 12. In my edition, that's on page 285 if you want to check it out. If he ever addressed this head-on in any later edition of his book, let me know in the comments. So yeah, rock solid reason for doubt for anyone with any critical thinking skills. Now, whatever happened with the body, someone who claims to be the resurrected Jesus shows up in all 4 Gospels. the level of uncertainty expressed by the disciples as to this person's identity varies from gospel to gospel, as usual. But all four accounts make it sound as though some imposter has decided to pick up where Jesus left off. In Matthew 28:17, when this guy meets with the 11 disciples, it's simply stated that some worshipped him, but some doubted. In Mark, though, it's absolutely hilarious how unconvinced the disciples are. First off, some Bibles don't even have the verses that contain Jesus' return from the dead. In those, the women find the tomb empty and the story ends there. Those that do include the optional verses also include some big reservations. In them, Mary Magdalene is the first to see Jesus, and as she has recently gone through an exorcism and had not one, not two, but 7 demons driven out of her, we know we can absolutely be sure she is a reliable witness. But for some reason, the disciples found her report unconvincing. When they heard that Jesus was alive and that she had seen him, they did not believe it. Really? I wonder why. Afterward, Jesus appeared in a different form to 2 of them while they were walking in the country. A different form? What the heck does that mean? Like maybe he looked like a different person? Could that be it? These returned and reported it to the rest, but they did not believe them either. Later, Jesus appeared to the 11 as they were eating. He rebuked them for their lack of faith and their stubborn refusal to believe those who had seen him after he had risen. Seriously, everyone who could be circling wagons around his Messiah here is just acting like, who the hell is this guy? It probably doesn't help his case that the dude claiming to be Jesus also spouts off some weird stuff about handling snakes and drinking poison. Bizarre, random stuff that was never mentioned by the living Jesus in any other place in the Gospels. In the book of Luke, Mary and the other women tell the disciples about the angels they saw at the empty tomb, but the men think it's nonsense, and even Peter can't imagine what happened to Jesus' body. Peter, however, got up and ran to the tomb. Bending over, he saw the strips of linen lying by themselves, and he went away, wondering to himself what had happened. Peter, is there some reason the word resurrection isn't popping into your head? Later, a couple of disciples are walking down the road chatting. As they talked and discussed these things with each other, Jesus himself came up and walked along with them, but they were kept from recognizing him. Now, what is that about? No reason is given. Maybe they couldn't recognize him because, I don't know, maybe because he looked like a totally different person altogether? Could that be it? Later he appears to all the disciples, who seem very surprised and unconvinced. He said to them, "Why are you troubled, and why do doubts rise in your minds? Look at my hands and my feet. It is I myself. Touch me and see. A ghost does not have flesh and bones, as you see I have." Not only is he flesh and bone, but he also has a human appetite too, apparently, asking, "Do you have anything here to eat?" Which is sort of endearing, but it doesn't do much to enhance the idea of the risen Jesus as being anything more than a standard issue human. And finally, we come to the book of John. In chapter 20, Mary Magdalene heads out while it's still dark to find Jesus' tomb open and empty. She runs back to a couple of disciples and says, "They have taken the Lord out of the tomb, and we don't know where they have put him." Now, why doesn't it occur to her that he is supposed to be magicked out of there? Obviously, she thinks he has been removed in the conventional way. The 2 disciples run to the tomb as well and see Jesus' body is missing. Incredibly, they too aren't in on how this is supposed to work, despite Jesus preaching it at them for weeks and months now. Later, someone sneaks up behind Mary and asks her why she's crying. Mary doesn't recognize this guy at first. She turned around and saw Jesus standing there, but she did not realize that it was Jesus. Mary then realizes, or more likely convinces herself, that it is indeed Jesus. This Jesus guy then appears amongst the bulk of the disciples. No doubt is expressed as to his identity then, But doubting Thomas isn't present at the time, and he refuses to believe the story until a week later when Jesus stops by again and says, "Put your finger here, see my hands, reach out your hand and put it into my side. Stop doubting and believe." Finally, Thomas is able to talk himself out of his skepticism and announces he too is convinced. Over and over and over again, in the gospel accounts themselves, serious doubts are raised about whether Jesus rose from the dead or not. Credit where credit is due. The writers, who could have just as easily left all the doubt out and presented a perfect resurrection narrative, instead show some integrity and leave all the doubt in. Good for them. The apologists could learn some ethics from those guys. Next time, we'll look at Jesus' resurrection and ask the question, assuming for the moment that it actually happened, why is any resurrection a big deal? The Bible sure doesn't promote them as anything extraordinary. Happy belated Easter.